I said, yeah, I just met him like a couple weeks ago, and I have your business card. So I texted that to Lucas. So we're excited to have you here. Everybody that I've been talking about is really curious about, BitBinders and what you guys offer, and the 1581. So what I'd like to do is, let you start your presentation, and then when you're done, I'd like to ask you some questions and open it up. Would that be cool?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, welcome, Craig. We'll let you take over the screen here.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and, again, thanks for inviting me. Thanks, Stuart, for reaching out. Really appreciate it. Really, the VCF exhibit last month was the very first time anybody outside of my company has seen any of these products. So I'm so excited to get this opportunity. I just recently got I started the website in August, and I just recently got it fully up to date just a week or so ago. So I haven't really started any advertising or anything. So this is a wonderful thing for me to begin with. I'm going to go ahead and here I am. Can you see me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, looks great.
Okay, great. So BitBinders really started decades ago, and I'm a graduate metallurgical engineer, actually, and moved into executive management about 30 years ago. And so I've been running various companies and things for about 30 years. And I just got to retire last year and do something that I really love. Those were great for a paycheck, but this is a lot more fun. So I started up this version of BitBinders. In the past, I had done a lot of early, and in the 90s, doing early machine vision type work. And I've always been interested in electronics. I recently got into 3D printing. Well, not recently. I've been doing 3D printing for probably 10 years, but making something really marketable just started about a year ago. And I've been working on these products for about a year, both in the case design, producing the case, and the electronics, doing all the electronics and producing those. And so I've come out with two main product lines so far, and those include floppy drives and power supplies. Again, both for Commodore computers. Commodore is my first love, but I have to admit I had a fling with Atari. I have a side fling with Atari. And so I may be also introducing some Atari products, but so far I've focused on the Commodore side. So what I'd like to do is go ahead and I'll show you my table from VCF. So there's what Stuart got to see at VCF, and the poster in back is really what inspired me. If you can see that, are you seeing double? That's really got me excited about 1581 replicas. As I said, I worked on them for about a year, and much of that was perfecting the case. I'll tell you what, I have some really great, I've got three 3D printers. And the hard work wasn't understanding how to use those. I've been doing 3D printing for a long time. The hard part was to get it so the cases looked like they weren't 3D printed. And that's what took me the longest time. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to switch to the BitBinders website. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
We're going to start by looking at the floppy drives. I'm going to go there, and there's really three versions of the floppy drives. On the right here is the 1581S. It's a replica of the, it's a 100% compatible replica of the original 1581. With the exception of the nameplate. I didn't want to put Commodore because they aren't Commodore, and I didn't want to imply that they were. And then I came up with the idea of this guy, which is a dual version. It's really two 1581Ss in one case, and you can assign them two different addresses. And then I had the idea that some people may not want the horizontal version. So I came up with a vertical version, which is less desktop space. So I'm going to start by talking about the 1581S. And we'll get a look at the, here you can see it. What really makes this different from other people that have tried to do 1581 replicas is you can see the detail here on the text. Let me get my mouse here. Right here, you can see the power and drive. That shows you the kind of resolution that I can get on these prints. So if I come down here, I should mention that all drives ship with a power supply. No longer that's another change that I made to the design of the electronics. This replica is 100% compatible, but I did change the power source. So now you can simply use a wall wart.
Nice.
As long as it's 7.5 to 12 volts and a 2 amp plus, it'll work. It's a very common size plug. It's a 5.5 millimeter by a 2.5 millimeter plug, which is the most common size out there. It does come with a 9-volt adapter, which should work for years. But if you would lose it, dig through your power supply drawers, and you probably have one that'll work. As long as it's between 7.5 and 12 volts, it'll work just fine. The all drives also come with this 1581 copy of the demo utilities disk that Commodore originally supplied with their drives, as well as a really cool piece of software called the 1581 toolkit, which if you have two of these or a dual drive, it'll do a full copy of a 1581 disk in 2 minutes. So that's really pretty neat. I'll go ahead and play a video here. This video will show you kind of a nice rotating view of these of this product. You can see the quality of the case. These weren't hand-picked or anything. This is very typical of production. You can see in the back the plug for the wall wart and where you can set the device number. And so you get the idea there. Oh, by the way, anytime anybody has any questions, please feel free to just shout them out. So that gives you an overview of the of what the drive looks like. Here's a close-up of the front. You can see some 3D printing lines right in this area, but that's really one of the only clues as to what it looks like. Here's a close view of the back. Here's the bottom. All the drives come serialized, so I know if you have a problem, I know exactly when I made it. And if there were any revisions, what revisions are on it. Right now, there are no revisions, so I haven't had a need to since I introduced it. So let me show you the guts of this thing. Give me just a second here, and I'll go to the PCB view. So here is a view of the PCB that's inside. Everybody still hearing me okay?
Yep. That's great.
Okay. Everybody's so quiet. So this is a PCB that actually I buy from a guy out of Germany. So it was designed by him and manufactured in Germany. I've tried various other boards that are out there, and frankly, this is by far the best version. I have absolutely no issues with them. They're literally perfect. I don't need to do any jumpers or fixes on them. So what you see here, this area is all the timing circuitry. So all of this in here is generating the clock signals for everything else. This is a 6502 processor. Again, these are the exact same chips that are in the original 1581. And they're in the exact same locations. The tracings and routings are identical except for the power supply. This is RAM. This is ROM. And I give you the option of getting it with a Jiffy DOS if you want.
Very nice.
This is the hard drive controller. It's a WD-1770 Western Digital hard drive controller. And let's see, this guy is an 8520 CIA adapter. Again, the same, manufactured by Commodore. MOS technology was owned by Commodore. So these three chips, this one, and this one, are no longer in production. So I have to go out and buy them used. Fortunately, they're still available in bulk. They're not cheap, but they're still available. So I have a stock supply to make probably 50 drives right now, but it's not hard to get a hold of any of those. These EEPROMs I burn myself, and when I burn a Jiffy DOS, I also, when I sell it, I buy a license for it. So when you buy a Jiffy DOS enabled drive, it is licensed through Retro, can't remember who it is now, but the official licensing company of the Jiffy DOS.
Retro Innovations.
Thank you, Retro Innovations. I've given them a fair amount of business so far. It's going to be a lot more, I hope, once I start publicizing this thing. All the rest of this circuitry in here, all of these chips are all currently available. They're still being made. They are just translating the logic that you need to do to get it from the Western Digital controller to this guy right here. And this is a board that I actually designed myself. There are other designs that are exactly the same, but I wanted this particular physical size. So I designed this board myself. This board, if I take it off, you can see that's what a 1581 board would look like. And the original 1581 drive would plug into this header right here. So if I go back here, and I probably won't get it on right because there's a whole bunch of pins that you got to get lined up, but I'll try. I think I got it. What this board does is it converts those signals, it converts the signals from a PC drive to be compatible with a 1581 drive. And again, all it's doing is flipping a couple of lines, logic lines.
That's like the DS0 and the cable select, right?
Not exactly. Really what it's doing, there are a couple of lines that on an original 1581 drive need to be inverted. So the logic needs to be inverted. And it's 3 lines actually. So this chip right here is inverting those 3 signals coming from this board out to this guy.
Okay.
And it just needs to do that to adapt PC drives to function as 1581 drives. So that's how it works. The difference in the power supply is right here. So that round plug on the back that you plug your wall board into feeds into this guy right here. It goes to the switch, and then it goes to this board right here. This board will take the 7.5 to 12 volts and convert it to exactly the voltage required by the board. So that gives you the flexibility in wall warts to use anything in that range. It just opens up all sorts of possibilities if you ever lose that wall wart or whatever, or if it goes bad or something like that, although those things just don't fail. So, and then right here, the serial ports for connecting other IEC devices. So any questions on the board? I guess not.
I have a question. So are there different versions of ROM for the 1581?
No. Well, there are. I always use the latest release. You can see the release date on here. 318045-02 is the last version that they released. And it's the least buggy. I don't know of any bugs, as a matter of fact, in this ROM. You can still get your hands on the earlier versions, but I don't know why you'd want to. If anybody would want an earlier version, I'd be more happy to burn that and use that. But again, I don't know why you'd want to do that. By the way, these green tags on here, you see every chip is tagged, and that's because I'm going to go back to the website, and I'm going to go over to more info and more about our disk drives. Excuse me, I'm going to go to how we test our products. And so when you come here, you see that all the chips that I use, both the brand new ones and the ones that are used, 3 Commodore chips that or 3 chips that aren't made anymore, both the new and the old chips go through this tester. And it does a fantastic job of testing those chips for functionality. And it's surprising because even amongst the new chips, I have found a couple that weren't passing. And so what that allows me to do is it allows me to, if I go here to how we test our products, I'm sorry, more about our disk drives. If you come down here and look at this, which is like the board I just showed, the green dots show that those chips have passed testing. And that's not just to make you feel better, it's to make the drives easier for me to make. Because I know when I use chips that are good, if I have a problem with a board, maybe there's a jumped solder point or something accidentally, I know the chips are good, so I don't have to worry about those. Before I started chip testing, I would go crazy trying to find out what was wrong with the board. This reduces it to almost no problems. If there is a problem, is with my soldering. So that's what those green dots mean. So I'm going to go back to, let's see here. Go back to here and go back to the PCB. So I think that explains everything about the PCB. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about the dual drives now. So if I go back to the website, let's see, and I go to floppy drives, here is the, this is actually the first version I made. And what I like about this one is this is all reinforced under this case. I'll show you that in just a little bit. And this will actually bear weight. So if you want to put a monitor on top of this, you can. And it'll be structurally just fine. And so if I go to, you know, again, everything here is similar. So you can see that's the bottom of that drive. Again, serialized. This happened to be 2009. And I tie those serial numbers as to who bought them, so I know who has what. You can see that otherwise, these are all very similar. I'm going to go ahead down to the video and make that full screen. And again, here you can see the quality of the cases is very high. What's nice about this is I have enough room to put a guide to the device settings. So here you set the device on this side, and here you set the device on this side. This is really just 2 1581S boards in here, but I left only the 2 serial interfaces. I thought having 4 interfaces on the back was probably overkill, and it allowed me to put this switch guide on here. So, so that's that. There was a little difference here because I had to strengthen the case. I had to put a screw right here. So there's a little bit of an inset on that one. And then on the front, there's one power light, which is this red light here. This is a green activity light for the left drive, and this is a green activity for the right drive. So that's the horizontal version. Let me go ahead here and let's see, how do I get out of this? Okay. I'm going to go to the vertical drive. Again, if anybody has any questions, go ahead and shout them out. The advantage of this version is that it takes up the same desk space that a single drive does. So I personally like the horizontal version, but I figured that some people might want the space-saving design of the vertical version. And again, it's very similar. you get a look at this. I clearly didn't use the Commodore. Otherwise, it looks like a Commodore label. And of course, there's a BitBinders B there rather than a Commodore C. Here's the back of the dual drive. And again, you have this nice switch guide here. These are for the top devices and these are for the bottom device. And I'll go ahead and play this video again, showing you what's kind of neat about this is you can actually see, if I stop it here, you can see through the vents and you can see that the air circulation in this case is very, very good. So there's no problem. Actually, when you run these things, they don't get warm. So, but you can see why. So again, there's a look at the whole thing, and this is very typical of shipping product. The differences in print quality is virtually none. So what you see is what you get here. So so that's it for the disk drives. I guess I'd ask if anybody has any other questions on the disk drives.
Yeah, Craig.
Yeah.
On the original 1581, the transfer rate for Commodore 64 is 300 bytes.
Yeah.
What's your transfer rate?
Same. It's identical.
Okay.
Yeah. That ensures compatibility, again, 100%. Obviously, with Jiffy DOS, just like a real 1581, it goes about 5 to 7 times faster. So if you don't have Jiffy DOS, you're really missing out. It makes using these things so pleasurable, both from a speed standpoint and by a utility standpoint. Jiffy DOS provides just fantastic commands for accessing your drives. It's so much easier than the load, quote asterisk or $sign rather, $8 is down to $sign. That's all you got to type. Of course, you got to have Jiffy DOS in your computer also. And again, you could go to Retro Innovations and buy the chips directly from them. I don't sell the chips directly. I'd have to become a reseller of theirs, and I haven't investigated that yet. But you can buy the chips for your computer from Retro Innovations. Yeah. Any other questions?
So I have a question. So I guess people have bought these already from you. Do you keep track of how many buy the vertical version versus the horizontal version?
Yeah. Yeah, it's about equal actually at this point. I wasn't sure which version people would like, and it's really been a little bit of both. If I come, well, let me come here. I think there's a review on this guy. Let me see. I know there's a review. What? Hold on. I can't remember. Let me go back to the main page. If I go down here. Here, this guy did a review, and you can see what he liked about it. He says it has a more robust feel than most injection molded products I've bought, and that's true. And I'll show you in a little bit why that is. Color match is also really good. I will make these. I can make these in various colors, but so far, I don't think there's been any demand for that. That's different. The power supplies, I've actually had demand for different colors. Even though on the website, I don't show a color selection, that'll be added soon. When I was at VCS, I have a bright blue Amiga 500. And so I had a matching power supply for that, and I was exhibiting it, I was using that in the exhibit. And the guy liked the blue one so much he bought it, and I had to use a regular color one. But I've made them in various colors, and they really look great. Another thing I probably should point out here, I got a great testimonial here. Anybody recognize Dan Sanderson?
I sure do.
Yeah, he's on the Mega 65 team. The Mega 65 is a Commodore 65 a clone, if you will. made out of Germany, and Dan works for them. I think he's out of the West Coast, out of California somewhere, but you can read what he says. He bought a double wide, the 1581 DH horizontal, and he puts his monitor on it and really likes that. And he says it's hard to tell it's a 3D printed unless you look very, very closely. And that's what I worked so hard to get. There's nothing amateurish looking about these things. So you can get one and feel, while it's not a 1581, it's a lot cheaper than a 1581. You know, right now, 1581s, I've seen them go anywhere from $400 to $700 on eBay. It's just ridiculous. But there's not that many of them out there, so that's why. And a
Greg,
1580, yeah.
oh, sorry, I mean, go ahead.
No, I'm done.
I was just going to say, when I saw your products at VCF in Chicago this year, they're truly remarkable. They're wonderfully crafted. And I was wondering, when I saw the horizontal design, I automatically thought, I'd like to put my monitor on that. Was that your intention when you designed it?
Yeah, let me show you something. Give me just a second here, and I'll this is the top of a 1581 DH, the horizontal version. So it's twice as wide. It's actually a little less than twice as wide as a single drive. But if I turn this over, you see that there's a lot of reinforcement in these. And if you look at the corners here, you'll see this reinforcement in the corner. Yet when you look at the side, it's not obvious that it's there. Obviously, when you look straight down, you can see them. But if you're looking at them from the front, you don't see those reinforcements. These add a lot of strength, but that's not really the key to this. The key to this is this guy. So this actually sits in here, well, upside down, if you will. But this, a floppy drive goes here, a floppy drive goes here, and this rib goes the entire height. So the bottom, this right here, actually sits on the bottom of the drive case, and the top of the drive case sits on here. So you can put a lot of weight on this thing, and it's no problem to have your monitor sitting on top of it. So yeah, when I thought of coming up with this dual horizontal design, I was worried about being able to put your monitor on top of there, and so I designed this whole thing around being able to do that. Does that answer your question?
Yes. It's a very interesting design. People kept saying, when I was promoting the event, people said, "Is that a Commodore drive?" And people are still confused. And it's like, don't you see the logo on there? I don't know. It just tricked the mind. I'm curious, Craig. You said you're a metallurgical engineer.
Yeah.
What prompted you to focus on this design upon retiring?
Yeah. So the first 2 years of metallurgical engineering is the same as any engineering. So, I learned mechanical design in that first 2 years. I learned some level of electronics in those first 2 years, but honestly, my whole life, I make things. So in my shop, I'm in my kind of my 3D printing area or lab right now. I'll go ahead and go back to this. I happen to have an arcade game set up too, so it's a combination of things. This room, I do all of my electronic work in. I also have off to my side, I have 3 3D printers that you can partially see one of them. There's 2 more that you can't see there. But in addition to that, I've got 2 lasers. I've got a CO2 laser and I've got a diode laser. The CO2 laser is a 60-watt laser, so it can actually cut, 1/2-inch width thick wood. Does plexiglass just beautifully. In fact, on my power supplies, the displays are cut using my CO2 laser. I also have a CNC mill. I have a CNC lathe, and I have a large CNC router. So I'm into manufacturing. I love manufacturing. And so over the years, I've acquired all these things. Frankly, when I was in my first career, I never had time to use any of this stuff. So when I finally retired, I'm getting to use all these things. So I'm just having a ball with this. I love retro computing, and I love manufacturing things, and I know a lot about manufacturing. So that's how I ended up here, I guess.
So, Craig, what is your connection to Commodore? I mean, what was your first Commodore?
Yeah.
Why
So
Commodore?
in so I started my major career, let me put it that way, in 1980. I'm an old guy. That's why I get to retire. And in 1981, I was working for a foundry, and a good place for a metallurgical engineer, I guess. And one of the things that a foundry has to do is take a whole assortment of different raw materials. And it could be scrap, it could be what are called virgin materials, which is something like pure nickel that you buy. But a lot of times you want to use scrap because it's cheaper than the raw elements. And so literally had about 200 materials in inventory. And the question was, how do I make the most efficient mix of those raw materials to hit the chemistry that I want in the end? And so I looked into a programming, a mathematical technique called linear programming. And it has nothing to do with computer programming. Although, if you don't use a computer to do linear programming, you got to do a hell of a lot of computations by hand, and it's just not practical. So in 81, I bought an Apple II with a disk drive, which at the time was revolutionary. And I think I paid about $2,800 for that. And the company I was working for, I developed the application then to do this linear programming using the inventory of raw materials that you had. So it was inventory management and it was linear programming. And I brought it into the company, and it saved them about $150,000 in the first year of using it. So after a year, they paid me $2,800 for my Apple and kept it. Later on, I transferred all that program over when the IBM PC came out because it was so much faster. Again, tens of thousands of computations to do the work. And so an IBM PC was significantly faster. So I no longer had a fun computer. And so I bought a Commodore 64 in 1982, I think it was. And I just loved that Commodore. I had so much fun with it. I'll deny this if ever made more public than this, but I had a friend across town. I was living in Cleveland at the time, and we traded software, and that was a whole lot of fun. And then when 386s came out, I bought a 386 PC. I didn't use the Commodore as much. And then went to a 486 PC, and the Commodore sat idle. Eventually I sold it, which I regret, because I'd like to have the first one I ever bought. But I then started collecting them in the mid 90s. And now I have a pretty extensive collection of both Commodore and Atari computers. Everything from I don't have a VIC-20. I never had much interest in that, but from the 64 to the 128 to the whole range of Amigas, I have them all. And on the Atari side, I've got 800 XLs. I've got 1040 1040T STE. I've got a Mega ST. So I've got a whole bunch of retro computers, and I love them all. I can't even remember what question I'm answering now, but
I asked, no, the question was, what was your first Commodore computer?
Yeah. So I
rambled.
rambled on a bit, but I love this stuff, so I don't mind bragging about it.
So for those of us, the VIC-20 was my first. and then the 64. You know, for those of us who were kind of in that earlier generation using the 5 1/4 floppy, that's all we knew, data sets and floppy disks. So by the time 1987, by the time the 3.5 floppy came out, most of us were already so engrossed in that it was hard to switch. It was hard to abandon the 1541.
Absolutely. And, you know, the 1581 sales weren't very good, to be honest with you. The product, however, is fantastic. If you ever use a 1581, you'll never use 5 1/4. The 1581s are significantly faster. They hold probably 4 times the amount of data, and they're dead reliable. They'll work for years and years and years. Those 5 1/4-inch drives are terribly unreliable. So today there are all sorts of other options for storage. I mean, I've got 2 Ultima 2 Plus cartridges. I've got a 64 Ultimate Elite on order. When he starts releasing the newest version, I'll get that. So I love all those things, but also I love the 3.5-inch floppies. It lets you have the nostalgia of floppy drives without the hassle of the 5 1/4, which were slow, loud, and unreliable. The 1581 is none of that. It's as reliable as PC floppy drives are these days. So, although PC floppies are obsolete too. So the drives I buy for my drives are out of old computers. Fortunately, the 1581s that I buy tend not to have seen very much use because people already had hard drives by then and CD drives and everything else. And so the 1581 drives that I can get my hands on are usually in very good shape. I do, by the way, refurb them all. I take the 1581 drives apart, or excuse me, the PC drives apart. I clean them all out. I do a head cleaning. I also remove the old grease from the worm gears that drive the head around, and I relubricate those. And then all my drives get tested with a 2-hour read and write, continuously 2-hour read and write cycle. And it'll alert me if there's any errors. I've only had one that didn't complete that testing successfully. But yeah, 2 hours of reading and writing nonstop is a pretty good test. So
It is. And you showed in the photo the power supply, and there were 2 floppy disks. Do those come with the drive?
yes,
Utility. Can you please tell us what's on those disks?
yeah, on the 1581, let's see here. I don't need to throw the picture back up. Well, I guess I can. Hold on. I'll go to the website, and if I go to any one of these, if I go to this picture, the first one is the Commodore Demo Utilities Disk that came with all 1581 drives, and there's a whole bunch of stuff on that. It lets you test out burst mode on a 128. 128s can operate in a burst mode that's significantly faster than a 64, a Commodore 64.
4,000 bytes per second.
Yeah, it's
on the 128.
Yeah, it's really fast, really fast. So there's utilities on there that let you try out that burst mode. There's utilities that let you, I think, print out a disk directory. There's probably a dozen utilities on there. So that disk originally came with all original 1581s, and I thought people would like to have that. One thing I should mention, I see on these disks happen to be, this one right here happens to be a single density because there's no hole on this side. You can see on this 1581 toolkit, there's a hole on this side, and that it's a high density disk. One other change that I make to the PC drives that I buy is I hardwire them to only read and write in double density. So you can put high density floppies in them without covering up that hole, which is typically what you have to do, is put a piece of tape over that. You don't have to do that on my drive because they automatically only read and write double density. So you don't have to cover up those holes. Now, a warning, those high density drives tend, I'm told, I've never had one fail, but I'm told that they don't last as long as a true double density disk floppy.
Mm.
Now I've heard that, but I've never experienced it. So there you go. Yeah, the 1581 toolkit was written by a company, and I have to admit I don't remember their names. Back, I think it was published in '92, and it's a fantastic piece of software. And again, it'll, with a dual drive or with two 1581 drives, it'll let you copy a disk in 2 minutes, which was unheard of in the day.
So this utility disk, Craig, this double density utility disk that we see, this
Yeah.
is the original software that would have been used on the original?
Yeah, it'll run on either a 64 or on a 128 computer, and the utilities it provides are fantastic. These guys were really, really experts in the 1581 drive. There's at least a half a dozen utilities on that thing that are just fantastic. Yeah, so those are the disks that come with every drive, whether it's a single or a double drive. Yeah. Let me see here. I'm going to come back to this. I'm having.
I have a question while you're looking at it. So the designs of these, did you refer to any original designs or look at the original Commodore, or did you just start from scratch? How did you do you come up with the specifications?
I have two original 1581s. My retro computer collection is pretty large. I have two original 1581s, and I took all the measurements. I measured all the angles, and then I'm pretty good at Fusion 360 CAD. I'm actually very good at Fusion 360 CAD, and so I redesigned them using Fusion 360. And then I export those designs out to step files that can be printed on 3D printer. So that's how I came up with the design. It's as close a duplication of the design as I could come up with, down to the 1/10 of a millimeter, as far as I can tell.
Craig, how close is your PCB to the original? In terms of if we were to put them side by side, it's 100% compatible with the design. Is it pretty close to the original?
It's extremely close to the original.
With what difference?
Well, the only real difference, to be honest with you, are the modifications I made. So I made a modification here, which takes the input from the wall adapter and routes it through the switch to this guy right here. This isn't really part of the PCB, so I can't say it's different. So it's the original PCB. This area would be blank. There was nothing here. So the design, it actually has a little cutout where this board goes. Other than that, as far as I can tell, all the traces and everything are identical. Yeah.
And obviously the Jiffy DOS would, that's.
Well, you could put a Jiffy DOS in an original 50. My 1581 Commodore 1581 drives both have Jiffy DOS in them. So, yeah, that's just a matter of swapping that ROM chip.
What were the challenges with this project?
Well, the biggest challenge. There were two big challenges. That's why it took me almost a year. It was probably closer to 10 months of development. The first problem was getting a functional board. There are various people out there you can buy replica boards from.
Yeah.
I tried 3 of them, and the 2 others, I found bugs that I had to jump around. I had to put some jumper wires in, and it made me a little nervous about them, to tell you the truth. And then I tried this one from this guy in Germany, and I don't have to do anything. It's perfect. So that took me probably 3 months to figure out, because I had to try the 3 boards and get one from Germany to see what it was like. And then after I found the one from Germany, I stockpiled them. So I have a whole bunch. I've got at least 50 of them. And he's more than happy to sell me more. In fact, I get a pretty good price on them. The shipping is what kills it. Then the next biggest challenge was getting the case down so that it didn't look 3D printed. That was a lot of work. It was a lot of work in tuning the printer, the printers, because I have multiple. And then it took a heck of a lot of work in design to be able to get all the resolution that I wanted. And you can really see it in the text. You can see it in the overall case, I think. Even the corners. If I go to forgive me for just a second here. If I go to the website and if I go to the corners, you can see, you really can't tell that that radius is 3D printed. If I go to the bottom, let me go to the bottom one. Hold on here. And let me enlarge that guy. I should be able to just click on this. And so this area right here, when you're printing it, it's in midair. This sits on the bed of the printer, which means that this area, which is higher, if I go to this view, you can see, come on. I'm working with 3 screens here, so it's a little clumsy. So this area right here is unsupported. It's printing in midair, which you can't do. So I had to design a support structure that would go under this area and yet leave the bottom looking, hold on, looking this good. So you can see here, if you had this in person and you looked real closely, you can see a little bit of a hint of a line here. That's about the only traces that you can find on it, other than the front. If you look really closely, let me go back to the front view. And this is being pretty critical. If I look real closely, I can see some lines here on these slanted areas.
That's the only place I can notice those on the front.
Yeah.
It's a very clean print. I'm very impressed with this.
Yeah, it took a lot of work. It took months to get that really nailed. And now, to tell you the truth, when I print them, I have about a 95% success rate.
Really?
Yeah, I have about 5% that I have to throw away after I'm done printing. The prints, by the way, take hours. To print the top of this case takes about 12 hours.
Wow.
To print the bottom takes about 12 hours. To print the front, I can print multiples of those at the same time. And so they only take about 3 hours a piece, because I can print multiples. I can fit multiples on one bed. And then all of these things. This label is actually printed. This label is printed. These labels are printed separately. So there's hours and hours. All told, going into one device, there's probably 24 hours of printing, all told. A little more than that.
No,
So,
kudos. When I saw him in person in Chicago this year, if you told me it was injection mold, I believe it.
that's what I was shooting for.
I mean, yeah.
You'll see other people who have tried making replica cases, and they really look 3D printed. Mine, you have to look closely. If I go back here, the best thing is this testimonial here from Dan Sanderson. It's hard to tell it's 3D printed unless you look very, very closely. Yeah. And that's what I was going for. The other thing is the color matching. The drives are color matched to the 64 and the 128 not the bread bin color. So they're meant for the other colors. I don't know if there's much interest in the bread bin color, or that people would really care that much. To be honest with you, I sourced this filament. The color is custom made for me. So I have to buy it in bulk, and I probably wouldn't have enough demand for the bread bin color to make it worth my while. The pricing is as you see on here. I think these are the base prices. There's a price increase if you add the Jiffy DOS, because it adds, I have to license it. So if I come here, you can see that if I select that, it goes up. In the case of a single, it goes up $14. So those are the options. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so Craig, you know how there's this whole craze, like you mentioned Mega 65 and Amiga Mini and all this, you know, this whole craze of resurgence of retro computing.
Yeah.
Do you have any plans or a secret desire to make, I mean, if you're printing and you're accomplishing this, what's stopping you from making a desktop computer? You know, maybe like a 3D printed Commodore 128.
Yeah, there's really nothing stopping me. I just haven't had time so far. These are my first products. So we've been talking all about the disk drives. We've got an hour. I don't know how close you want to stick to that timeline, or if I can keep going. Because I want to talk about the power supplies too. There's nothing stopping me. I plan on introducing more products as I go. Right now, I'm working on a prototype monitor, which will take an LCD display, a 15-inch LCD display. I'm designing a case that it's like if Commodore made an LCD monitor, it would look like this. That's the idea. And what I'm doing with that, it's just a prototype so far, and I'm far from done. But it will take multiple versions of input and display them on the LCD. So I'm planning on making it compatible with the Commodore line, including Amigas, and the Atari line. I'm trying to make it compatible with all those computers. I have a lot more work to do to get the electronics down right. I've got a few of them implemented, but it's going to be at least 6 months before I come out with that monitor.
That sounds interesting, actually.
Have you seen the other products that are similar coming out of Europe?
Yeah, mine's going to be a lot cheaper.
And hopefully a nicer looking form factor.
Yeah, again, I'm trying. If Commodore would have made an LCD monitor, I'm imagining what it would look like. And so I'm taking the stylings of like a, I'm getting my Atari monitors and my Commodore monitors mixed up. I have the color. I'm trying to remember the monitor number. Anyway, I have a
1084.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I've so far
Commodore monitor.
Yeah, so far my ideas are making it look like the front of a 1084. Yeah, the back will, of course, will be very different. It'll be thicker than an LCD because I've got all the electronics to do the various conversions in there. And I haven't designed the back yet because I'm not done with the electronics.
You're designing the electronics yourself, or are you going to use consumer off the shelf? Because most of those are available.
I'm going to use a combination of off the shelf and custom. Because I want to have, again, I want to be able to use that the full range of Commodore and Amiga computers, both the 8-bit and the 16/32-bit versions.
Yep.
And I want to have those all available. I'm targeting a price of $350 to $400. I know that's a lot of money, but the other versions that I've seen that are multifunctional start at $550 and go up from there.
Yeah.
So,
plus import duties.
Yes. And so I'm targeting $350 to $400. Again, it's a prototype. I'm not done enough to know that it's going to become a product, but that's what I'm working on. I've got a couple of employees that are taking care of some of the other work for me, so I can spend more time on design. So yeah, there's nothing stopping me from making 1581 cases, or excuse me, Commodore 128 style cases, or coming up with something different. I don't know.
I think there's a huge vacuum in the market right now for replacement cases.
Yeah, when I think about that, maybe I should make that a higher priority, because I can't think of many options other than old computers.
Yeah, there's a few online that have done 3D prints. It's hard to find them in thingy world.
Yeah, and I'll bet they're not great quality either.
And in a lot of the cases you see at VCF, with Jessica's on this call, and Jessica's got some awesome cases. And every time I see Jessica's computers, he's got an injection mold that was done by a Kickstarter years ago that are no longer available. So they're very hard to get a hold of.
Yeah, the other thing I've done is I made I'm just thinking out loud here. I made a Amiga keyboard with cherry switches, mechanical switches. And I've also been thinking about making that a product. Amiga on the Lake has a deal with some guy in Europe to make those, but I've been trying to buy one for 2 years and I haven't been able to, they never have them. I think they have a supply chain problem, a big supply chain problem. Those are the only other keyboards, Amiga, but there's no reason I couldn't make those for the 64 and 128 and the Ataris if there were any demand for them. It's really nice using a real mechanical keyboard on these, but at some point, it's no longer an original computer. You might as well use an emulator because it's been modified so much. I don't know. I got mixed emotions about that. Yeah, I better move on to the power supplies, or this could go on forever. You see my website here. I'm gonna go to the website, and here's the 3 power supplies that I'm currently producing. The first one I made was the AMI Power, which is for Amiga computers. This I was exhibiting at VCF Midwest last month. Since then, I've come out with 64 power and 128 power. And there's 2 things. Well, there's a bunch of things that differentiate these things. Let me go ahead and go to the Amiga Power. In fact, I tell you what, I'm gonna go behind the curtain again here for a moment. So give me a second.
The man behind the curtain. Behind the machine. Oh, I'm so excited about this. I think that people, not just retro collectors, but people that are archiving, need these kind of devices. We need disk drives. Despite the fact that some people are abandoning them in the retro community. I'm not going to name names. But I saw a lot of that going on where these machines are gutted. And I'm thinking to myself, what is the future of disk drive?
Well, I think, Nico, part of the problem is reliability these days, right? Like your media is degrading, the drives are failing, people don't know how to fix them. And I absolutely agree with you. This is a great archival solution because, sorry, I'm terrible with names.
Craig?
Sorry? Craig.
Are you talking about me, Craig? Yeah.
Particularly refurbished drive units mechs in, so you could do a long archival session without the worry of your drive failing.
Yeah. I have a 60-day warranty, no questions asked. If you don't like it, you got 60 days.
I don't know how you wouldn't like this, though.
What was that?
I don't know how you wouldn't like it. It's pretty cool. You need to,
Um,
you need to do a 4-drive model.
oh,
Oh, whoa.
I'll tell you what.
Isn't that a little gluttonous?
If you'll cough up $1,000, I'll do one because they're gonna cost that much.
I
It'll
know.
be twice. My doubles are about $500, a little over
I
500.
saw that.
Oh,
And
I
that's
love
probably in US dollars, right?
That's in US dollars. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what, these things are not cheap to make.
I know.
The printer time is I had to buy 3 printers to keep up with everything.
Do you have a picture of the inside of one of the double drive units?
Uh
Or could you
of
show us like the electronics?
of the top, you mean? Like I did of
No,
the
the how you tie the boards together.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't have one apart. I could take it apart in a minute if you want me to.
It's not too much trouble. I wouldn't mind seeing it.
Why you do that, Craig? Where are you sourcing the ROM and the RAM?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got my assistant here. One of my assistants here is going to take it apart for me. Okay. The RAM is still made these days. It's it's a live product. The ROMs are also new. I buy the blank ROMs, EPROMs, I should say, and I program them myself. So those chips are new and plentiful. They're not hard to get a hold of. The 3 chips that are harder to get a hold of, there's still lots of them out there, but they're expensive. The 6502 is probably the least expensive of the 3. The next is the WD 1770. That's no longer in production, but they're plentiful. I just received an order today of about 40 of those. And the third is the 8520, which is the complex interface adapter that was made by Commodore or MOS Technologies. Those are very expensive. So between the time and tying up 3 printers of printing and the PCBs aren't cheap either. $300 was about the lowest I could come out with these at, and make a decent buck. So, yeah, he's taking apart the drive right now, and it's a 2.5, I think. Here you go. He's taking apart the drive. Yeah. So, any other? Should I switch to power supplies while he's doing that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead here to the website. So there's a couple of things that differentiate these. I did not try to duplicate the design of the Commodore power supplies because, frankly, the design sucks. They're ugly. They're horrible. If you're using an original one, you should cut the cords off and throw it in the trash, because it's not a matter of if it will fail. It's a matter of when it will fail. And often when they go out, they go over voltage, and there's no over voltage protection. So what that does is feed too much voltage in your computer, which tends to fry the computer. So my power supplies don't look anything like a Commodore power supply. They look like this. And there's a few key features. The most obvious standout are the displays on the top, and I'll explain those in a moment. But what I really thought about the ergonomics of these things, and I'll go ahead and click on this. I gotta go to this. I got too many monitors. So here you see a close-up view of this guy. What's nice about these, the power inlet is here. The power going to the computer is here. They're both on the back side. So you can put this on your desk or under your desk. The switch is big and it's right in the front. So the cords are no longer running all over the place, and the switch is really easy to get to. Before I started making these, I had purchased some, just one screw? Yeah, let me, no, there's under here. No holes. Oh, hold on. I got to think about that.
There are no holes under the thing.
No, I remember.
Yeah, that's what I always thought was annoying was the cable in the front and the back.
Yeah,
Nice design.
I thought, what a stupid design. And so anyway, I bought a couple, before I started making these, I had purchased a couple of on the market new power supplies that people are making for the 64, the 128, and the Amiga. And again, they have the power cords coming in both sides. And so you got a mess of cables.
Yeah.
The one of the ones that I bought, which is a very famous one, has a little tiny power switch on the back. Well, it's not, there is really no back, but it's a tiny switch that you can barely find. And I'm not exaggerating. It was just silly. So I looked at the ergonomics, and so I put the switch on the front, and it's a good size switch, no problem with that. The power cords are in the back. And now I'll talk about these displays. So on the Amiga, there are three power sources. There's a 5-volt, which is where all the work gets done. So on the 5 volts, you can see what voltage the power supply is supplying, and you can see what amperage the computer is drawing. So you know, if you're like my Amiga, my blue Amiga runs at 2.3 amps without using any extra. That's with an accelerator. I've got a 68030 in that accelerator card. If someday I see it drawing 3 amps, I know something's going goofy. Or if I see it drawing less than 2.3 amps, I know something's going goofy. The other thing is when you get into these things, you don't know if you're overdriving, you're over demanding the power supplies. The Commodore power supplies, I think the 64s were 2 amps and the Amigas were 3 amps. And I know you, with add-ons on the Amiga, you can go over that. So this Amiga power supply supplies 4 amps, continuous 5 amps peak. And inside is a Meanwell power supply, which, if you know Meanwells, they're very reliable. My electronics are in these displays. And so, as I mentioned, there's 3 voltage on Amigas. There's a 5 volt, there's a plus 12 volt, and a minus 12 volt. And so that's what's displayed over here. Let's see here. If I come to other views, so if I come to this, this one is for an Amiga, so you can see it's got an Amiga plug, which is identical to a 1581 plug in appearance, but not in function, which never made any sense. They supply all the wrong voltages for a 1581, but will plug into a 1581. And they come with...
You mean a 128 there? Because the 1581 I thought had a round plug on it.
I'm sorry, I'm mixing up. You're right, the 128. Yeah. So the plug on the Amiga and the 128 are mechanically identical, but electronically they're very different, which is stupid, because if you plug an Amiga power supply into a 128, you're going to do something to your 128. So just a caution there. So this is the Amiga version. Here's the back of it. All my power supplies operate on anything from 100 to 240 volts. And so I can sell the same power supply into Europe or wherever. And I don't need to do any modifications. On the Amiga, it's all automatic. On the other power supplies, there's a switch on the bottom. Here's the same power supply in white. There's what the bottom looks like. Here's my blue one. I had this on the floor at VCF.
I really like that.
Oh,
I really
gorgeous.
Yeah, so this is an A1200 net case. I don't know if anybody's familiar with A1200 net, but they produce modern cases for Amiga boards, and you can see the color match is pretty good. I'm going to do color matches on the other 1200 nets, but I don't have any other colors of these cases yet. So I'm going to be asking publicly for people to send me the trapdoor off of their case so I can duplicate the color, and I'll send it back to them and give them some good discount on a power supply. Anyway, here you can see this. This is my 1200. I said it was 2.3 volts. It's actually, or amps rather. You can actually see it's 2.32. And these supply around 12 volts, 11.9 to 12.1 until you plug the computer in. As soon as you plug the computer in, you find out that that computer actually drives those voltages up. So, but again, if you see one of these going bad, you know something's wrong. I'm going to give you a little demo here of an Amiga power supply. So give me a second. I'm going to come back here. I have to get it to release my mouse. Okay, and then I can go to this guy. And so here you see, this is what I was doing when I went behind the curtain, was getting this thing set up. So I'm going to go ahead and do a reset. And you see it's at 1.76 amps. This is a Commodore 600 Amiga. And I just did a reset. So it's going to jump up to 2 amps because it's got a floppy drive in it, and it activated the floppy. So I'll show you the accuracy of this system. Right here, this is a network card going into a PCMCIA slot on the side of the Amiga. You can see that right now the card is in and it's drawing 1.79 amps. If I take it out, it's down to 1.76. So that card is drawing 0.03 amps. That's how accurate this display is. I'm going to pop the disk drive out, and then I'm going to put it back in, the floppy drive. So let me eject it. And you see I'm at 1.76 amps. So if I put the drive in, you're going to see it jump up to 2 amps. And that's the drive is using about 0.3 amps. My point is that if something is drifting in your computer, you're going to see it here over time. So those displays serve two purposes. One is knowing that you're not overmaxing the power supply, and the second is watching for any symptoms of problems with your computer. These power supplies, by the way, they use Meanwell. Internally, they use Meanwell power supplies, which have over voltage protection, under voltage protection, short circuit protection, over temperature protection, all these things which those old supplies never had. So, so that's the AMI power. I'm going to switch back to the website now, and I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to go back to the power supplies and talk about the Commodore 64 and the Commodore 128 power supplies are identical except for the labeling and the plug that's on the end. So the plug that's on the end of the 64 power is obviously meant for the 64, and the plug that's on the end of the 128 power is obviously meant for the 128. So let me go to those. I'm going to click on these photos. And here the difference is the 128 and the 64 use different power supply voltages than the Amiga does. They use 5 volts for almost everything. They actually use 9 volts AC to do some timing. They use the timing off of the 60 hertz or 50 hertz, wherever you're at. Oddly, they use that for some of the timing within the 64 and 128. So that there's virtually no amperage draw on that. I think they're rated at 0.1 amps. And anything up to 12 volts is fine. My power supply actually outputs a little over 9 volts. I have bought competitive power supplies that actually output 12 volts. The Commodore spec is 9 volts. So I'm a little closer to that than most of the competitive power supplies. Again, on the 5 volt, that's where all the amps are drawn. You can see that's what it looks like on the front and the back and the bottom. So again, very similar to, oh, there's the plug for the 128. So you get the idea. Very similar in that but the difference between Amigas in the 64 and 128 are the different voltages. Again, this one has a Meanwell power supply in it, a different one. This supplies up to 3 amps, which no matter what you do, you're never going to get to with add-ons and so on. You're never going to get up to 3 amps. It also has a 9 volt transformer. And one difference between this and the Amiga is in order to operate on the different voltages, there's a switch here that lets you switch 110 to 220. And again, it'll work anywhere from 100 to 240. but you got to have that switch in the right position. If you don't, it's not going to hurt anything. It just won't be supplying the right voltages to your computer, but it won't blow anything up. So that's it for the power supplies. Any questions on those? Okay, I'm going to go behind the curtain, I hope, one last time. So give me a second.
Anybody on here have the original 1581?
I had an original 1581 and then I got rid of it. And then
Concur.
I got a
Right.
kit from Joe Palumbo and put an Amiga 500 drive in it.
I have one.
Oh, nice.
And
Lament
also
the day I give mine away.
an FD 4000.
Really nice.
Yeah, I know you can put an Amiga drive in them. This is the guts of a dual vertical. So what you see here is the bottom case has one circuit board in it. This camera, by the way, that I'm using for these overhead shots is not a great camera, so things are a little fuzzy. And then here is the rest of it. So there is a floppy drive here, a floppy drive here, and the second circuit board, which is almost, there are some electronic differences between the two, but they're minor. And this white connector right here connects to this white connector here.
And that carries your power and your IEC signals then?
That carries the IEC signals. This plug carries the power to this guy right here. And you'll see that this one has this power supply converter here. So again, it takes the wall wart and supplies the power to this board. This one also has it. And so the voltage coming from the power, the wall wart, the wall adapter, comes in here and it gets converted to the right voltage for this board here and the right voltage for this board here. By the way, these are made to be replaceable. You can see there's a plug on them. So if anything would ever happen to that, you can just buy one from me. They're cheap, like $15. Okay. And all the chips are socketed, every single chip. So
I noticed that.
If anything would go wrong in the future, and you need to get that repaired, no problem. You go in with an oscilloscope, you find out what chip is bad, and you just pop a new one in. So they're designed to be, you shouldn't ever have to do anything. These electronics are extremely reliable. The PC floppy drives are extremely reliable. You shouldn't ever have to do anything for decades. But if you did, everything's socketed and everything's replaceable. So every IC, I should say. The resistors and stuff, those are soldered, but those aren't going to fail. The caps are new, brand new, and modern day electrolytic capacitors are much better than the old electrolytic capacitors that were made in the 80s. And they just don't feel like the old ones used to. So you don't have to recap these. They're going to last for decades. Yeah, cool. So that gives you that's the guts of it.
Thanks for showing me.
Yeah, and as far as again reinforcements, if I show you this, the cables to the front panel pass through this, but you see this, there's a screw that goes through here and here, and that is, this column is reinforced with this guy here, and the cables feed through that slot. Okay. That slot is designed that way because it's easy to 3D print that top. You don't have to support it. So yeah, there's the guts.
That's great.
Yeah. So
I like how you've done that.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of them. Again, it's taken me a lot of work to get here and a lot of money, to be honest with you. I've got quite an investment going, but it's my second career, so I'm willing to invest in it. I hope I hope there's demand for these. You know, so far I've sold a few, but I haven't advertised these at all except for VCF. And right after this meeting, I'm going to start sending these to YouTubers, and I'm going to start posting on bulletin boards that these things are available, publicizing BitBinders website, and I hope there's going to be sales. I did very well at VCF, so I think the acceptance is going to be pretty high.
I know a good YouTuber.
Well, please send me his name, and I'd like to ask him if he'd be willing to accept a couple of power supply and a disk drive to evaluate.
Well, that would be me.
Oh, there you go. I would love. Who is this?
David Bradley here.
Yeah, well, I would be most appreciative, and I'll send you, if you will do a review of them, and I want it to be an honest review. If there's something wrong, please say so. But I'll send you a disk drive and a power supply of your choice, if you promise to do a review of it.
I promise. Probably
Well,
I'll do more than one.
I'll tell you what, if you would go on my website, which I've made on every view, it's right here, bitbinders.com. Can't miss it. Go there and you can either use the form on the website or the web email address. Send me an email, Dave, and I'll let me know what you'd like to have, and I'll send
I'm
them.
going now.
What's that? Okay. Yeah. So after this, I'm going to start advertising these things. I haven't done anything yet except exhibit at VCF. By the way, I will be at VCF, the South California VCF in February. So I'm exhibiting there also. Yeah.
Craig,
Anybody have? Go ahead.
sorry, what is your ideas about Atari?
You know, I have been using Atari 800s for a long time. The power supply on those, I could certainly do a power supply for those with the same sort of features that I do on the Commodore side. On the STs and the STEs, those power supplies are internal, so they're, you know, I don't think I need to get into that. You can already buy replacement internal power supplies for those. I'm not sure what else. I was going to throw this open actually to the group. Does anybody have any other product suggestions for me that they'd
Oh
like?
my gosh, yes.
Well, let's hear them.
Commodore 64-128 compatible mouse interface that
Oh,
actually works.
okay. I was going to say they're out there, but I haven't used them, so they're buggy.
I've tried 3 different brands and
Yeah.
none of them work.
Well, that's neat. I'll look at that. That I would like to do. Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you can get a modern wireless LED mouse to plug into USB head, and
Well, I know I can do that.
yeah.
If I can figure out the circuitry to do wired, it's real easy to move the
or the
wireless.
1531A or the 1531, which is a proportional.
Yeah, yeah. But I could even design the case for those.
Yeah.
So, and the internals are readily available. So, as long as you get the converter right. So I'll look at that. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Anything else? For Ataris, for example? Anybody got any ideas? The Ataris are far less customizable than the Commodores are, at least in my knowledge. There's a lot less you can do to modify them and do crazy stuff with them. So again, if anybody has any ideas or thinks of something in the future, again, just go to my website, shoot me a message and let me know. I'd love to have ideas because I've got these products developed and I'm looking to do more. I want to be the guy that the company that can supply really good quality retro stuff. That's what I want to be. So
Into the new CMD.
you know, I've thought about that. I've had a couple people ask about that.
I love it.
The electronic design on that would be lengthy. I'll have to think about that one.
No, I'm not suggesting that you have to, duplicate their products. I'm just saying, your business model is like the new CMD.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Although CMD didn't do that great a job on the aesthetics, I don't think. So
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, their aesthetics
did
at
a-
the time was pretty spot on for modern computers.
yeah, but it wasn't a good fit for retro computers. Yeah.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Craig, I think a good idea would be a Commodore 128 hybrid machine with an ARM CPU.
Well, what would be easier to implement than that would be a FPGA version of, and it's already out there. Anybody familiar with oh God, I have one. Yeah, I've got a Mister that uses an FPGA, and the emulation is very, very good.
Yeah, the Pi emulators are great, but
well,
then you have to waste a case. If you start producing cases that could take Pi
well,
or the original motherboards.
What I was thinking about, a guy just came out with a clone of the main board for the Mister. And it's a lot cheaper than the real version of the main Mister board. The main Mister board I think is about $200, and I think he's selling it for about half that price. So if his worked, and I could come up with a design of cases, that would be a pretty compelling. The emulation is so good, it's hard to tell you're not running the real thing. That would make more sense, I think, than doing an ARM emulation. It would still be an emulation if you did an ARM. You can use Raspberry Pis that actually make decent emulators. That would be even cheaper. The only differentiator there would be my case design. That's all.
But I do believe, not to take away from Doc's suggestion, that, and Dr. Obsoleto, I hope you're okay with me shortening it to Doc, is that I think it was the idea that you could use it for both, right? That you could run Windows ARM as well as, a dedicated bare bones emulator on it.
I see.
And you could use 9-pin joysticks or USB joysticks.
Yeah. The only thing I'll say about ARM, for example, a Raspberry Pi, is that you can run, I run Linux as my main daily driver. And to be honest with you, I'm not a Linux geek, and I don't need to go into the guts of Linux very often. If you wanted to, do word processing or web viewing, a Pi really works great. Email, perfect. So running a modern version of a Linux distro, they're very good. They're so Windows-like that they're almost Windows. And you really don't need to get in the guts if you don't want to. So ARM, embedded Windows ARM would be a licensing fee, and I don't have any idea how much those are.
Oh yeah. I mean, you can make it an option.
Yeah, I could do that. I just don't know what would be the cost driver in that. I don't have any idea what Microsoft charges for licensing Windows ARM, embedded Windows. Yeah, I imagine in low volume it's probably not cheap, is my guess. But probably like $100, I would guess.
Well, there's certainly the OS The OS is already out there to run all the emulation side, and it's a basic Linux distro. And it will
Yeah.
run on Intel, it will run on ARM, it will run on Pi.
It'll run on everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there are people out there making the case for it.
Yeah.
They swear up and down they're selling out on Facebook, but I don't know. I was on there last night. I don't think
Do you
they
know,
have.
are they injection molded or are they printed?
I don't know. I don't know, but they are using an MX keyboard, right? So
Are they
I won't say the brand. They're out there. You
do they
know
look
who
good?
they are as a competitor from Europe.
Do they look good?
Yeah, they look like the
Okay,
original
well,
brand.
maybe there's not a space for me in that. I don't know.
Or more cost competitive space, maybe more option.
Well, how much are they charging?
I'll follow up with you on that offline.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
It's not me. I'll tell you that.
I forget
It's
that
not
these
me.
things. I forget that these things sometimes go public. So
Yeah.
who you mentioned Jess or
Jessica.
Yeah,
who is that?
Jessica Peterson. Oh, it's on this call.
Hello?
She wrote. Here you. She wrote Light Cycles.
Oh
I don't
yeah,
know if you-
yeah.
She was right next to your booth.
Oh yeah. Oh, I know her well. She borrowed my mouse.
Yeah, hey.
Hi. Pleasure to talk to you again.
Yeah, you too.
I think we were good neighbors. I think.
Yeah, it was great.
Okay, I was afraid you had no comment on that.
It was
So.
great, yeah. Now I'm just kind of jealous how much traffic you are getting at your booth.
Yeah, I was pretty happy with the traffic I was getting.
Yeah, it was a cool
By
product.
the end of the first day, my voice was just about gone. So. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Craig. I appreciate you coming on. Wish you the best of luck, and encourage everybody to take advantage of the 10% discount and take a look at this. If you can, go to one of the VCS and take a look at this in person. The video doesn't do it justice, but it's still a great presentation.
Yeah. Well, thank you again very much for inviting me. This was a lot of fun, and sorry for the production issue, but it worked before, so I'm not sure what happened.
Thank you, Craig.
You
No
bet.
problem.
And
Take care.
I really will think a world of Commodore. I may just do that. It'd be fun if nothing else. So, all right.
Awesome. Good night. And
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for attending. Please subscribe to the channel. We'll also be hosting this on Man Behind the Machine podcast as well. So thank you.